Hey guys, what's up? MurderofBirds here. Thanks for checking out the video. So I'm actually recording this video standalone before my live stream discussion of Volume 8, Chapter 12. For these mini discussions, usually it's the other way around. I usually extract a point, a talking point, or a major point that I think is worthy of its own video. I post it, you guys comment, and a lot of you guys have enjoyed these formatted videos for the fact that they're short, they're digestible, and they're not as long as my live streams. And I felt like this video deserved its own upload, its own recording, so I can be as concise, thorough as possible in getting all of my points across. I'm going to be using some visual aids, but I'm going to be talking about everything that transpired from Volume 8, Chapter 12 creation regarding the Staff of Creation, Ambrosius, and Team RWBY's objective of creation, of their creation plans for Penny, and subsequently getting all of the citizens of Atlas and Mantle to vacuo. There's been a lot of discourse regarding I guess the genuine nature of how this whole plan went off. Some people are saying that it's a retcon. Some people are saying that it's breaking the rules, that it's cheap, that it's not fair, that it doesn't make sense. And I'm gonna try my best to express the fact that it does make sense, and there are stipulations in play, and there's a lot of wordplay and a particular loophole that Team RWBY exploited, similar to how they did with the relic back in Volume 6 for Jin. And I'm gonna just try my best to explain this as well as I can to people who genuinely are confused, to people who are saying that this doesn't make sense, and hopefully for people who don't like this idea, but maybe my explanation will get them to reconsider their thoughts. So before we jump into all of that, I want to give a quick shout out to Amazon. Not sponsored, by the way. Technically, I want to give a shout out to my Amazon Prime account because I'm going to be using a bit of visual aid here. I have these two jars, which is, it sounds really funny, but like I've always had this jar. I've always owned this jar. I actually bought the green balls in here are going to represent Penny or represent her aura, and this jar, I bought this separate jar because I only owned one jar, and this was technically a jar that I put all my change in, like my spare change. So these two jars are going to kind of represent Penny in her before and after phase, and trying to give you guys a visual representation because the wording in this chapter is deliberately confusing. It's to create a loophole for Ambrosius to be forced into a situation where Team RWBY gets a creation and a byproduct of what happens with Penny by the end of the chapter. And a lot of people are hung up on specific things like robotic parts and only robotic parts. So I'm going to try my best to explain this. We're going to break this down moment to moment in chronological order of everything that we understand and figure out in this chapter regarding the staff, the spirit, and the plan in particular. So let's get started.
And we haven't even told you about him.
Who?
The spirit and the staff. Like Jin. But, well, he's a character. He can build you anything, but only if you can explain to him how. Like any craftsman, he'll need blueprints, some sort of reference. It'll help if we have real-world examples to show him.
I've already gone through the city layouts for the SDC evacuation. Maybe I can help.
Ambrosius can only create things if you can explain how they are created. A lot of people are throwing around this idea of, why don't they just create a super weapon that can destroy Salem? Okay. Explain to Ambrosius how to create a super weapon capable of destroying Salem. You have to give him references. You have to give him material that he can work with to make that, to create that into existence. You can't just be like, create something that will destroy Salem. Well, give me a reference of something that exists in your world that can destroy Salem, and then we'll go from there. So similar to Jin, right? We know her rules are you need her name in order to summon her. You can't ask a future event, and you only get 3 questions every 100 years. Similar to Ambrosius, you can create anything. He can create anything. Similar to how Jin knows everything, but there's stipulations. You only get 3 questions every 100 years, and you can create anything as long as you know how to tell him to create the thing.
Hi, Mr. Ambrosius. Sir, listen, it's about our friend. She's dying.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that you know it's against the rules for me to bring people back from the dead, so...
That's not what we want. She's not your typical girl.
And I just want to throw this extra thing in here because a lot of people have been under the assumption, or the theory rather, that bringing people like Pyrrha or Torchic back from the dead was capable or possible, even though back during Volume 6, Chapter 3, it was established that bringing people back from the dead was not, in fact, creation. So Pyrrha coming back, Torchic coming back, Talk coming back, any dead characters coming back is not possible.
So she isn't. I'd love to meet whoever did this.
So the fact that Ambrosius said he would love to meet the man who did this, and it was actually Pietro who created Penny, I'm really happy that Watts isn't around to hear that, because that would absolutely crush his entire self-esteem and self-worth as a creator, because he felt like his project was better than Pietro's. But more in particular, Ambrosius emphasizes that Penny, and RWBY emphasizes that Penny is indeed not a usual girl. This is a I think a one-of-a-kind opportunity that they find themselves with Penny. I don't think how they worked this loophole with Penny can be possible with any other thing. She is the first synthetic person capable of generating an aura. She's a one-of-a-kind individual. So the fact that she's made of machine and real-world bits of like aura, like manifesting an actual soul of a person, is very specific in this case.
There's something eating away at her. I'm guessing you think you have some clever plan to save her. Just know, I will give you exactly what you asked for, and I don't want any complaining when it's not what you wanted.
So we're about to get into the big stuff here, but I just want to give a big shout out to the voice actor for this character, Valentine Stokes. I've never heard their work before. I don't know if they're a well-known voice actor, or if this is like a one-time gig that they're doing, but they're incredibly talented with Ambrosius' voice. I love the fact that he's like, just know I will create whatever it is you ask. Like, I just love Ambrosius's, I just love the voice acting done for the character. I think it's really, really great. And as we know, you have to be very specific, very descriptive, similar to how with Jin, you have to be very deliberate in what you are asking, because if you ask something that can be answered in you want to get the most bang for your buck. So for Jin, you want to be as descriptive to get the most information out of a question. Similar to Ambrosius, you have to be very specific of what you want, how you want it made, etc. Otherwise, you're going to get something that you didn't ask for.
We brought her schematics. We want you to make a new version of her, using her exact same robot parts.
That was curiously worded, girl.
So I think this is the point where we'll get into it, okay? So this represents Penny. I'm gonna just assume that this jar represents Penny Polendina as we know her. The case itself will be her mechanical parts, the green bits will be her aura, and the red cap will represent the virus. So RWBY is asking for a new version of her using everything that you see here. The mechanical parts, the virus. And the fact that Ambrosius mentions that was curiously worded, girl, it's because that's the whole point. They want this question to be very, not confusing for Ambrosius to understand, but they're trying to weasel in wordplay to get something that they want that they're not specifically asking for. And here's what it is.
An exact copy of her would include the virus. An exact copy of her without the virus would cease to exist the second you make something else. And we kind of want to keep her around longer than that.
Not much I can say there. Team RWBY and company knows that they want to constantly be able to use this relic, and the best way to do that is to have short-term creations that will be used temporarily, but that you'll be fine with getting rid of and being able to utilize something else in the future. So not wanting something super long-term. I made this joke as well, but imagine you can just create Lien over and over and over again. You go to the store, you pay for your items, you get the items, you create something else. The store owner loses your money, but you keep the product. So that's kind of the mindset you have to go into. You don't want anything that's going to last you years and years. You want short bursts of controlled things or created things that you'll be able to have like minimal use for a short period of time.
You've done your homework.
We want you to create a new version of her, using her existing robotic parts, taking the virus with them.
So this is where the true visual representation is going to be had, and I think this is where a lot of people are getting hung up on the wordplay here. So RWBY says, we want you to create a new version of Penny Polendina using her exact robot parts, taking the virus with them. So what they're basically asking for, because you can't just say, I want this, you have to ask him to create something. So what they're basically saying is, Ambrosius, we want you to create a version of Penny that is robot only, which means we want you to create a version of Penny. Hold on. All over my desk. Okay, we want you to create a version of Penny that has only her existing robot parts and the virus. Essentially, they want to create a creation process which splits the machine from the soul. And as the episode goes on, this is actually what happens, but it creates a byproduct and a loophole that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Okay, but if I take the robot parts out of her, that would leave...
Penny, The girl who's always been there underneath it.
You can't destroy. It's against the rules. But you wouldn't be destroying her. Her soul is who she is.
The mechanical parts are just extra.
So now I would like to introduce the loophole that Team RWBY and company have officially created and presented to Ambrosius. Let me be the first to say this so everybody understands what is happening. Team RWBY asked for the mechanical penny with the virus. That is the creation that they asked for, and thus so, that is what the stipulations of the original rules implied. They were asked to make sure that they bring the schematics, blueprints, and they explain how to create this. This is within RWBY's jurisdiction to tell Ambrosius how to create the thing. In doing so, they have now introduced a loophole because now they got the creation they wanted, but now Ambrosius is left with a soul that he himself is not able to destroy. He cannot destroy. That's against his whole shtick as being the relic of creation. So what they've essentially done has created a byproduct that Ambrosius has to figure out. Team RWBY is not obligated to tell him how to fix this, but simultaneously, this is never what Team RWBY wanted. This is what they wanted. And they're going through this process very meticulously because they don't know if it's gonna work. And this is exactly why they asked to use the existing robot parts, because if they got new parts, this penny would still have those other parts embedded with the aura. But what they essentially did was, hey, we want you to take these existing robot parts and create a version of Penny basically without an aura, without a soul. And now, Ambrosius, you are left with this soul that you have to figure out what to do with it because you're the relic of creation. You cannot destroy this. And until you figure out what to do with this aura, it's kind of like up in the air. They basically put Ambrosius in a situation where he has to create a by-process solution for this aura, for this soul to exist in because he can't destroy it. And I think it's important to also understand that's why RWBY said that Penny isn't your typical girl, and that's why she said that this is who Penny truly is.
But a soul without a complete body, what would be left?
I don't know. I guess you just have to get creative.
Now, a lot of people were upset by this specific mention here by RWBY. A lot of people are under the assumption that because Ambrosius is creating something for this aura, that Team RWBY has any obligation to tell him how to make it. This is not what is happening here. Team RWBY asked for this machine with the mechanical parts only and the virus only. Team RWBY got what they wanted. And that's it. What they are figuring out right now for Ambrosius is, what do I do with this aura that I can't destroy? That's why RWBY says, I don't know what it's gonna create. I guess you gotta get creative because this is your problem now. When in the back of their heads, they're thinking, I hope this works. I hope he figures out what we're trying to force onto him, which is we want you to make a vessel for this soul. We want you to make another Penny bot. We want you to make Penny into a real girl, but they can't tell him that because they're not asking for a creation. They already got the thing they wanted. This is a byproduct of what they asked for. And Ambrosius is now being forced into a situation of oh shit. Similar to Jin. Just think of the thing with Jin, right? The rules state you have to summon her by calling her name, 3 questions every 100 years, and you can't ask a future event. There is nothing in the rules that said that RWBY couldn't summon Jin in Volume 6 to buy more time to channel her silver eyes. It was Jin who specifically said, I will not allow you to summon me without asking a question again. And before anybody comes forward and says, well then how do you explain Hazel and Oscar doing that? They didn't ask Jin the question. The difference here is intent. RWBY summoned Jin with the intention of never asking a question. That's why she even says when she comes out of it, I don't have a question for you. Whereas when Oscar summoned Jin, Hazel was expecting to ask a question if she didn't, if things didn't line up to what Ozma said. But then he was like, actually, you know what? I had a question before you were summoned, but now I'm good. So this is the exact same thing almost. Ambrosius has to make a creation of his own machinations because what Team RWBY asked of him forced this soul onto his lap, and he has to figure out what to do with it. And Team RWBY saying get creative isn't oh, that makes no fucking sense. What do you mean get creative? Aren't you supposed to explain how it works? No. Team RWBY isn't asking. Team RWBY already got the thing they wanted. And I'm sorry that I'm getting hung up on this, but this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. People think they asked for the human penny. They did not ask for the human penny. They asked for the robot penny essentially without the soul, which then creates this soul that's floating in the ether. And because if it doesn't have a vessel, it's going to get destroyed. Ambrosius says, okay, shit, I need to find out what to do with this. Okay, I'm just going to create her, turn her into a real girl. And thus you get the creation that Team RWBY asked for, and you get the byproduct that they were hoping and gunning for because Ambrosius was put into a situation.
I suppose I could do a little add a touch-up. But if I do that, how much of the old painting would be my work and how much would be her? Just coming up to the surface.
And the beauty about all of this, and that's what his last thing was, like the ship of Thesis. It's like, if I do this, how much of this will be Penny and how much of this will be my work? And does this constitute as a creation, even though Team RWBY isn't asking me to do any of this? I'm just literally stuck in this situation now.
This is all very exciting and very dangerous. I don't know what the results are going to be.
We don't have any other options. We believe in her.
Then ready yourselves to witness my artistry! It's done.
So in that moment, Ambrosius created the mechanical Penny with only the virus like Team RWBY asked, and because the aura needed a vessel in order to survive, he created a human vessel, a human body vessel, where Penny's aura is now fully facilitated. That's why you see like the robot Penny like self-destruct and get destroyed, and then when they create the pathways to Vacuo, you see it get erased from existence after that because, you know, once you create something new, the previous thing you created is gone.
Well, everything appears to be in order. You were quite thorough. Disappointingly so.
So, it's done.
Yeah.
So if anything, it should very much tell the audience that this was what they always created. It's just weird because people are assuming that because this is what they wanted, clearly this is what they created. But no, this is what they truly wanted, but they had to create this in order to get this due to a loophole. Which means that all of the rules and stipulations and everything that was in play at the beginning still held true up to this point. It's just the clever wordplay put Ambrosius in a situation where he had to do something with Penny's aura. Otherwise, it would be destroyed. And he just decided to follow her schematics and just basically create a real version of her because they're essentially saying her aura is who she truly is. She's not like a regular girl. So Ambrosius was probably, you know, follow the Pinocchio reference as well. It's like, well, now I'm a real girl. So, you know, that's basically how that happened. But in essence, that is the long end and short end of it. That is everything explaining Ambrosius, the staff of creation, and Team RWBY's creation plan and theory going into how they were going to create Penny. I really don't know how else I can explain it better than especially regarding the visual aid of the machine with the virus and the human vessel with Penny's soul currently now in it. This is like bye-bye. This no longer exists because it got deteriorated once they made the pathways to Vacuo. And that is essentially how this worked. They did nothing outside of what they specifically asked for. Everything that happened was them putting a little bit of effort forward to kind of nudge Ambrosius in the right direction, but they did not ask for a second creation. That was a creation that Ambrosius had to figure out due to a byproduct created that put him in a position because of a loophole to fix an issue. But overall, I don't really know how this video is going to work until it's edited all together, but hopefully it makes a lot of sense, snapping back and forth between the clips and me explaining things. I really, really hope this explains a lot of things for people because a lot of people are jumping the gun and saying that this is poor writing, that this doesn't make sense, that they're breaking the rules, that it's retcon, that it doesn't make sense. And you can be upset with the execution. You can feel like, oh man, that was almost too easy for Team RWBY. They went in there, they got exactly what they wanted and then some. But to say that it doesn't make sense is is just untrue. It makes legitimate sense. Like, it makes sense objectively. Everything else that's on the subjective realm, like if you didn't like how it turned out, you didn't like the execution, you felt like it was too easy, that's valid. But to say that it's retconned because they created a loophole when RWBY literally did the same thing with Jin summoning her without asking a question. It wasn't until Jin said, don't do that again, we even knew that was a possibility, because there's nothing in the rules that said that's not possible. Similar to how you can't just be like, hey, create an indestructible one-hit kill weapon that can kill Salem, because you don't have any existing reference of that to give him to use that as. So in essence, I really just hope that this explains it for people who are genuinely concerned and curious about this process, because I know that there's a lot of people that are confused, because the wordplay is supposed to be deliberately confusing to put Ambrosius in that situation, to go forth with that creation, not thinking clearly that if I create this thing they asked for, I'm going to have this byproduct to deal with later. So in essence, that is the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to try my best to explain this to people in the live stream discussion, but I felt the need to, at the very least, make this its own separate video so it comes across more concise and understandable than me trying to explain it to most likely hundreds of people in my live stream. But overall, yeah, that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Leave any concerns or questions you guys might have. I'll try to explain it, or if other people are reading the comments, if you guys can be, you know, friendly and informative, if you guys do understand this process, I'd really appreciate that. And yeah, until then, I will see you guys all in the next video. Take care.